Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Bolen, and I am a child and adolescent psychology intern at USF. Today, we're going to be talking about a variety of behavioral approaches to manage problematic and challenging behaviors in children. Some of the strategies that we are going to discuss today may resonate with you, and some may not. But all of the interventions that we are going to discuss today have been proven to be effective for treating challenging behaviors in children. The critical aspect that I would like to highlight at the outset is the importance of practicing these skills and being consistent in your use of a skill. I also encourage you to consider these skills as tools that you can kind of pull out of your parenting toolbox from time to time. So the goals of the session today are to just improve overall confidence and competence in parent management of dealing with difficult behaviors, to decrease challenging behaviors, to reduce overall conflicts between parents and children, increase those positive interactions, and then reduce overall parenting stress to increase balance and harmony within the family. So to start, we will talk about why problem behaviors occur. So children are constantly trying out different behaviors and evaluating the response that they get to these behaviors. Was the response to their behavior good or was it bad? So children want to get what they want as immediately as possible while still avoiding punishment or consequences. So if something good happens after a child engages in a behavior, they'll be more likely to repeat that behavior in the future. If something bad happens after a child engages in a behavior, the child will be less likely to engage in that behavior in the future. Within behaviorism, we like to think that all behavior serves some kind of function or a purpose. All behavior is teaching us something or telling us something. And with children, we can kind of conceptualize behavior as falling into one of two categories. And these are usually to either get something or to get out of something. So, to get something, children often engage in different behaviors to get things like attention, to get rewards, to get tangible items, access to preferred activities, toys, foods, things like that. And then engaging in different behaviors to get out of something. So, things like chores or homework or parents asking them to clean something up, or really any command or direction from a caregiver. Children learn by imitating others. So, modeling is one of the most powerful forms of learning, and modeling teaches children both positive and negative behaviors. So, children are learning through parents. Children are always observing their parents and kind of observing what behaviors they engage in. Children learn from other children, and that can be both good and bad at times. And children also learn from TV programs, from books, from lots of different things. So, imitation and modeling is very important in a child's learning. And an important thing to remember with this is that children are more likely to imitate behaviors that they see being reinforced. So if a child observes another child to get a lot of attention and kind of resources from adults when they engage in a temper tantrum, that child might be like, oh, I see that this behavior works for this child. Are getting all of this attention. Maybe I will try that behavior in the future and see if that works for me. With children, attention is attention, and this can be kind of tricky because oftentimes it doesn't matter if the attention is positive or negative attention. And this can be something like all press is good press. As long as I'm getting attention for the behaviors that I'm engaging in, I'm going to keep trying them. So the only way to not give attention to something is to completely ignore it, which is much easier said than done. We're going to go into this a little bit more later, but I often recommend that parents ignore the annoying and obnoxious behaviors. However, we really cannot ignore any dangerous or destructive behaviors. So, the key to changing any problematic behavior in children is for caregivers to change how they respond to the behavior. So we want parents to respond to different behaviors in ways that make it so that the child's behavior doesn't work anymore. So going back to the function that they're not able to get what they're wanting or to get out of what they're not wanting. Parents changing their responses to that so it doesn't work. And once a behavior doesn't work, it will eventually stop. So the skills that we will be learning today will be helpful for a variety of difficult and challenging behaviors. Things like noncompliance and defiance, aggression, oppositionality, any difficulties with any developmental delays, as well as things like hyperactivity and inattention. So the first skill that we will be discussing today is giving clear directions. And with this, we want to be telling our children what to do instead of what not to do. Oftentimes, when parents give directions, they give them in the form of telling their children what not to do, using words like no, don't, and stop. Stop running, don't hit. Instead of telling their children the more appropriate behavior to engage in, quiet feet in the hallway, gentle hands. So we want to give our children very clear, specific, and simple directions in order to promote compliance. We want to eliminate any passive directions or directions in the form of questions. So a lot of times I'll hear parents say something like, should we clean up now? We never want to give directions in the form of questions because we don't want to give our children the opportunity to say, no, I don't want to clean up now. When really what we weren't asking was a choice. So being very clear and specific and not being passive in the way that we give directions. We want to be brief and simple, so I recommend no more than 5 words. We want to be cognizant of our child's developmental level and be sure that we're giving directions that are developmentally appropriate. So we wouldn't want to be giving like a 3-year-old 5-step directions because that's just not developmentally appropriate for them to remember all of those steps. So thinking about where your child is at developmentally and then kind of monitoring the way that you are giving directions. Something that is really helpful with giving clear directions is to think about what you want your child to do with their body parts. So feet on the floor, bottom in your chair, um, soft voice, gentle hands. So thinking about kind of the positive opposite of the problematic and difficult behaviors. As I was saying earlier, children learn best through modeling, and parents can be great role models in the way that they give directions. So we want parents to stay as calm as possible when giving directions while still being clear and firm and direct in the way that they give directions. And then when the child complies with our directions, we always, always, always want to provide a lot of praise. So anytime our children are engaging in behaviors that we would like them to continue, that we would like to see more of, we always want to praise. The next skill that we are going to discuss is special playtime. So special playtime is really just one-on-one time with you and your child, where you're interacting without any distractions. You're really giving each other your undivided attention and enjoying your time together. Special playtime is really important because it teaches children social skills. So, children learn through play, and when parents play with them, it just provides more opportunities to learn social skills, learn things like sharing and turn taking um, through different activities and kind of experimentation with different types of play. Social skills are developed through special play, but also relationships are enhanced. So children feel close and warm relationships with parents who kind of make the effort to spend that one on one time with them. And really, it sets their children up for successful relationships in the future. With special playtime, we always want our child to lead. So we want to give them the option of what to play with, and we want to just kind of let them be in charge for that distinct, specific amount of time. We want to reflect and imitate what our children are doing. So if my child is drawing a sun, oh, I see you're drawing a sun. I'm going to draw a sun too. Let them know that you like what they're doing. Reflect the things that they say. Letting them know that you are listening and that you understand, and letting them know that what they say is important to you. We want to avoid asking questions and giving commands. So, a lot of the time, the majority of the time when we interact with children, we interact with them through asking lots and lots of questions. I heard a statistic once that adults speak to children in 80% or more of questions. And if you start to pay attention to this, you will likely see that this is pretty accurate. So we want to avoid asking questions and giving commands just within this distinct period of time. We ask that special playtime only be 5 minutes per day. So 5 minutes per day is long enough for children to kind of get a therapeutic benefit out of this interaction with parents. But it's not too long where it's unsustainable or it's difficult to schedule. And with special playtime, we want this to, again, be a distinct period of time. So we want this to be something that has a clear beginning and a clear ending. So letting our children know, okay, this is your special playtime. You can play with whatever you want. And then as special playtime is ending, giving a warning, special playtime is about to end, and then letting them know when it is completed. With this, we always want to tell our children what they will be doing after special playtime as well. This is something that is really fun and enjoyable for children and can be difficult for them to transition to a different activity after special playtime. So I always recommend that before special playtime, parents say something like, first, we're going to have our special playtime and then we're going to have dinner. So always letting them know what's going to happen next. Um, we will talk more about this a little later in the presentation, but a timer can be really helpful for special playtime. Just setting a timer for 5 minutes. When the timer goes ding, we're going to move on to something else. With special playtime, parents can model appropriate behaviors. Again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but children learn most through observing parents, and parents model different behaviors for children. And then we always want to use praise and encouragement for effort. So we want this to be an interaction that's really fun. We want parents to be enthusiastic in their play. Um, and we want it to overall be an enjoyable experience. We never want to use special playtime as a reward or a consequence. So, this is something that children should have daily if possible. And it shouldn't be taken away for misbehavior or shouldn't be given to a child for appropriate behaviors. I often say that when a child is having a more challenging or difficult day, or they're engaging in or increasing the frequency in which they engage in difficult behaviors, that's can be a sign that maybe one-on-one time is needed. So I would never recommend taking away special playtime. With this, we want to avoid games with rules. So things like board games. Without, we have to give commands at times and ask questions. So that's not the most appropriate activity. We also want to avoid toys that encourage hyperactive or aggressive behaviors. So some children have difficulty with things like action figures or superheroes or little army men. Some good examples of activities to use during special playtime are things like coloring or Play-Doh, blocks, bubbles is another good activity. Really anything where you can communicate with your child while you are engaging in the activity while avoiding questions and commands. The next skill that we are going to talk about is developing routines. So, routines are activities that are completed throughout the day that have clear beginnings and clear endings. So, that's what distinguishes a routine just from kind of day to day actions. Humans kind of thrive on routines. And if you think about it, it's possible that you kind of complete things in a sequence daily, whether that's like brushing your teeth, getting your pajamas on, reading a book, drinking water, going to bed. Um, Humans kind of gravitate towards routines, and these are something that are critical for healthy development for children. So, routines make life predictable and consistent, and are thought to enhance development as they help children to regulate their behavior, develop self control, improve compliance, help with skills like attention and follow through. When routines are predictable and children know what to anticipate, this really helps to reduce stress and chaos and helps the whole household run more smoothly. And this is great for children because it helps reduce anxiety, it increases their confidence, and helps them to establish a sense of control over their environment. I always talk about the importance of consistency and predictability, and routines are an excellent way to establish that. When things are unpredictable and routines are not in place, we often see an increase in challenging or difficult behaviors, which really disrupts learning. There are less opportunities for learning when things are chaotic, and it often leads to strained and difficult relationships between parents and caregivers. So routines help to establish expectations, tells children what is expected from them and what they can expect from others. And I really like this visual on this slide. This is just a simple bedtime routine that a child can look at every night and follow each step. This is something that can be posted in the bathroom at the child's eye level, and they can refer to it nightly for the different steps that they need to complete. This can be really fun for children. I've worked with some parents who laminate their routines, and children enjoy crossing them off. Some parents make Velcro and have different tasks Velcroed onto the routine. And once a child completes the task, they can tear it off and put it away. And that can make it more fun and interactive for children. But I always recommend visual supports with routines just to help children, again, to be consistent. When it's not possible to follow a routine, it's important that we're prepared for an increase in challenging behavior. So there are going to be times where our routines are disrupted and things change, life kind of happens. And when those things occur, we want to offer support for our children and then get back into our routines as quickly as possible. Sleep routines are extremely important. If you speak with any psychologist about a child having difficult behaviors, oftentimes the first question will be something related to sleep. So, sleep routines extremely important. We can kind of tell if our sleep routines are effective by observing our child's daily functioning. If our child is engaging in difficult behaviors throughout the day, it may be an indication that children are not getting enough sleep. Um, and with all of our routines, we want to evaluate our current structure and steps and really kind of look and see, is this routine making my life more stressful, or is this routine making my life more simple? If your routine is making your life stressful, it's important that we modify and change our routines and rituals. So we want to limit any routine to about 15 or 20 minutes. Anything longer than that is difficult to remain consistent and is more difficult to sustain over a period of time. With a bedtime routine specifically, we never want to give in to attempts to postpone bedtime. So this is something where it's very important to stick to the routine. Um, this is difficult for a lot of parents because in the moment it's easier to give in to challenging behaviors and let your child get into bed with you or read that additional story that your child is asking for. But this kind of sets you up for more difficulties long term. And children are very smart. So they learn very quickly which behaviors help them to successfully postpone bedtime. And once they learn those behaviors, they'll use them more frequently and more forcefully, oftentimes at night. So, very important that we are consistent with our bedtime routines, that we don't give in to attempts to delay bedtime, that we keep the routine simple and around 15 to 20 minutes again. Okay, the next skill that we are going to learn is my favorite parenting technique, and this is catching your child being good. So, this is the quickest and most effective way to kind of curb challenging behavior. And we do this by utilizing praise, which is a form of positive verbal reinforcement to encourage appropriate behavior. Learning is enhanced with positive reinforcement. So when we praise the appropriate behaviors our children are engaging in, um, children learn, okay, that's a behavior that gives me positive attention. I'll be more likely to do that again in the future. With catching our children being good, it's very important that we provide praise as close to the behavior as possible. So a child uses their manners. We want to say something like, "Thank you so much for using your manners," immediately after the child uses them. And the reason why we want the praise to occur as close to the behavior as possible is because this is what really promotes learning. This is when learning is the most effective. With our praises, we want to be very specific. So instead of saying things like great job or awesome, we want to tell our children exactly what they are doing that we like. So I love the way that you're using your indoor voice. It makes me so happy when you share your toys. I really appreciate that when I asked you to come hold my hand, you came back so quickly and grabbed my hand. You were so fast. So being super, super specific about the behaviors that you like. And this is something that can be challenging. So when things are going well, this is oftentimes the opportunities for parents to kind of like take a step back and focus on all of the other things that they have to do. And I really encourage parents to really focus on when things are going well and be sure to be praising those behaviors. Um, we want there to be a 5-to-1 ratio of positive statements to negative statements. So for every criticism or negative statement that we give to our child, we want to balance that with 5 positive statements and interactions. This is really to promote learning. So again, really focusing on the things that we want our children to be doing, praising that to promote learning. And then we want to be enthusiastic in our praise. So we don't want to be disingenuous, but we want to be enthusiastic as possible, and really make it fun and kind of exciting for our kids. So I talked about this a little bit earlier, and this is kind of the opposite of catching your child being good. But the next skill that we are going to discuss is selective attention. So this is, as best as you can, just ignoring any annoying and obnoxious behavior. As I mentioned earlier, the annoying and obnoxious behaviors that we can kind of ignore are the things like whining, talking in a baby voice, having a tantrum if the child is safely having a tantrum, complaining, really any kind of junk behaviors we can completely ignore. If a child is being dangerous and destructive, those are the things we can't ignore. Those are the times where we have to intervene and provide some kind of consequence. When we engage with a child who is whining or crying or really using any of those annoying or obnoxious behaviors, it provides reinforcement for those behaviors. Giving the child attention, again, makes it more likely that the child will use that behavior again in the future. And when we engage when a child is whining, for example, it often escalates things. So the child might become a little more whiny, might be raising their voice. So I recommend not engaging it with any of those behaviors whatsoever. Um, so I often recommend focusing on one behavior at a time. So if your child speaks in a baby voice, you might say something like, okay, I'm no longer going to give any attention when my child speaks in a baby voice. So they're speaking in a baby voice and it's ignore, 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 no verbal attention, no nonverbal attention. And then the second that your child speaks in their big kid voice, we want to provide praise. Thank you so much for speaking in your big kid voice. Now I can understand you. So while we are ignoring the problematic behaviors, we are always on the lookout for the first sign of those appropriate opposite behaviors to praise. Um, Again, with this, we want to provide no attention. As I was just saying, that includes verbal and nonverbal attention. So we want to kind of go into robot mode in a way. We want to avoid eye contact. We want to turn away from our child. If we're playing, maybe playing on our own for a little bit, and then returning our attention to our children when they do engage in that appropriate behavior. This skill is something that is much, much, much easier said than done. It can be really, really challenging for parents to ignore those annoying and obnoxious behaviors. That's why I recommend working on one at a time so you can really master it and be successful in remaining consistent in your ignoring. But you'll find that the more you do this, children will learn that behavior no longer works. The function of that behavior is not served in that situation, and I'm not going to use that behavior anymore. One thing to keep in mind is a concept in psychology called the extinction burst. So, when you change the way that you are interacting with your child, it can often be kind of confusing for them. Uh, if you think about it, the things that were working for them in the past no longer work. And it can be like, that's odd. I'm not getting what I want when all of these other times in my past, this worked. I was able to get what I want. So, with the extinction burst, behavior often gets worse before it gets better. So, when a behavior that previously worked is no longer working, a child will often kind of ramp things up and escalate their behavior to the next level in order to achieve their desired outcome. So, I tell parents if things are getting worse, that's a good sign. That shows that what you are doing is working, and it's very important that you stick with it and you stay consistent, um, because we will see eventually that this behavior will decrease. Again, much easier said than done, but this is an excellent skill to use in combination with catching your children being good. The next skill that we are going to discuss is validating and redirecting. So, this is in contrast to the planned ignoring that we just discussed, in that this is a skill where you recognize and acknowledge your child's feelings. So, verbally telling your child, I understand you're feeling this way, um, but then redirecting your child to the more appropriate behavior. So while we're validating our children, we're continuing to ignore the problematic behaviors, the whining, the fussing, anything like that. We're validating that what they're going through is sad or upsetting or hard, um, while also redirecting them to a more appropriate behavior. So we want to let our children know that we understand and respect how they're feeling, and then prompt them to use an appropriate behavior or a positive opposite. So if a child is having difficulty sharing, you might say something like, I know it's hard to share your toys. Um, First, it's Gavin's turn, and then it's going to be your turn. So this tells your child, like, I get it. I understand this is hard. I get that this is how you're feeling, but this is kind of what's happening. The next skill that we will discuss is follow through. So this is a strategy that can be used to make sure that directions are complied with. So with follow through, there is not an opportunity for a child to escape or avoid different commands. So it takes into account that a child may not know how to follow a direction, because with follow through, parents are offering to help a child. And this teaches a child what is expected, the different behaviors that you would like them to engage in. So with follow through, we want to make sure that we, as much as possible, that we're giving commands that we can reinforce upon compliance or provide a consequence with non-compliance. We want to avoid giving too many instructions. So kind of going back to giving clear directions, we want to keep it simple, concise, and clear. We can give our children options. With this, I'll go through kind of what the script is, but we offer the child, uh, can you do this on your own or do you need help? So the script looks like this. There are 6 different steps. So first, you want to make sure that you have your child's attention. You want to validate how your child is feeling and then tell them clearly what to do. So in the example of sharing the toys, I understand it's hard to share your toys. First is going to be Gavin's turn, and then it'll be your turn. And then say the child does not hand over the toy to Gavin. You wait 5 seconds, and then you repeat the direction. Please hand the toy to Gavin. You wait 5 seconds again, and then you say, "Do you need help or can you do it yourself?" Wait 5 more seconds. If the child still doesn't give the toy to Gavin, you say, "You must need help." And with follow through, this looks like you physically going hand over hand with the child. So putting your hand on their hand and passing the toy to Gavin. Again, this ensures that a child is not able to escape or avoid direction. It ensures that compliance will be met. With this, it's very important that we follow through every time. So if we're going to give a direction, we want to follow through. We don't want to get halfway through the sequence and kind of abandon it. Again, with everything, consistency is very important. And this picture here is a very good example of follow through. So this person is showing this other person how to spread peanut butter on a piece of bread. It's a perfect example of your hands going over your child and showing them exactly what they need to be doing. The next skill we will discuss is the first then strategy. So this is a skill that helps your child anticipate the sequence of activities they will be engaging in. This strategy is really helpful because it improves interactions between parents and children and reduces resistance to directions and power struggles that children often engage in. So this looks like first you will eat dinner and then you'll watch Blue's Clues. So with this strategy, it is often helpful to pair a less desirable behavior with a more desirable behavior. So if your child has difficulty eating dinner, it's a battle every night, you can pair this undesirable activity with something that they enjoy, like a TV show or tablet time, or one-on-one time with parents. Visuals can be really helpful. So there are examples of visuals on this slide, um, really being very clear about what's happening. The pictures are very simple. There are 1 to 2 words on these. Very easy for a child to look at and kind of understand. We want to be consistent again with our first then strategy. And then overall, this strategy teaches children that good things become available when they comply. So first you're going to do this thing that you don't enjoy so much, but then you'll have access to this thing that you really enjoy. Timers are fantastic. Timers are really great with transitions. I often recommend this to families. Um, they're great with transitions, turn taking, helping a child stay on task when they're doing homework, helpful for things like waiting. And timers are great because they can be used anywhere. Most people have some kind of timer on their phone already. And so it's something that's easily accessible. These are inexpensive and you can take them different places. So really great thing to incorporate into your parenting toolbox. A lot of times it can be helpful when the parent places the blame for the ending of an activity on the timer. So if a child has difficulty stopping an enjoyable activity, I understand it's hard to stop playing. Mr. Timer went ding, time to stop. Now we're going to move on to this next task. So timers can be really helpful in reducing challenging behavior around difficult things like waiting, homework, transitions, things that can be difficult for a lot of children. Choices are a great skill to use. Choices are awesome in that it can really help to avoid power struggles. So children are developmentally, they are seeking independence and autonomy. They want to do things on their own. And giving a child choices can really help to empower them and give them a sense of control over their environment, give them confidence in their ability to make choices, and have that sense of control. With choices, we want to be sure that we are only giving our children two choices, because we don't want to overwhelm them. And it's very important that the caregiver decides what the options are, and that caregivers are only giving the two options of things that they really could care less, kind of what option their child chooses. Um, because whatever one their child chooses, it's very important that they allow their child to have the one that they chose. Um, so provide two options. Would you like to wear the red shirt or the yellow shirt? You can hold up the different options to make it visual for the child. This can be really helpful for younger kids, especially who maybe have difficulty kind of holding their options in their mind and making a decision. And when our child makes a choice, we want to provide praise. Thank you for making a choice so quickly. Okay, the next skill that we will discuss is using busy bags. Busy bags are awesome for situations and different settings where a child is going to have more of a difficult time. So I often think of situations where a child will have to wait. So at the doctor's office or dentist's office, at restaurants or on airplanes. Um, Waiting can be really difficult for children, and busy bags can be really helpful in preventing problematic behaviors from occurring during these difficult situations. With busy bags, the activities in them need to be highly desirable. And these should be activities that are only reserved for the occasions when children might be a little more restless or more difficult to manage. So this doesn't look like the toys that children play with every single day. This is kind of toys that only come out on special occasions. We want to make sure that the activities in the busy bag are quiet, and that they are things that won't make a mess, things that we can quickly clean up. So I wouldn't recommend putting something like a paint set or Play-Doh in your busy bag, because if the doctor calls you, we want it to be something where we can kind of swoop it up real quick, throw it in the bag, and go. Some good examples of things for busy bags are like special coloring books and crayons, things like an Etch-a-Sketch, Legos, trains, um, activity books, fidget toys, things like that are really great. I've also worked with some parents who rotate through their children's toys. So take some of their toys out of their child's rotation and keep them in their busy bag, and their child only has access to those specific toys during more challenging situations, and then continuously rotate. And it doesn't need to be something that costs a lot of money. Oftentimes, there are really great activities and things for busy bags in like the dollar section at different stores. Sensory products can be great to carry around in a busy bag and just in general. A lot of kids become overwhelmed in public places, and sensory products and toys can be really helpful in distracting children from the stimulation. So things like balls and spinners, lighted toys. There's examples on this slide here of different fidget toys as well as different busy bags. Reward systems can be really great in helping with problematic behaviors. And with reward systems, we want them to be simple and easy to follow for them to be sustainable. Oftentimes, reward systems can kind of get have lots of different steps and rules and different things to track and follow. So we want it to be simple and sustainable and easy for you and your child to kind of understand. So I recommend choosing one behavior at a time for the reward system, mastering that behavior, learning that skill, and then moving on to the next. We want to establish a simple goal for our reward system, create a list of potential options for rewards, things like stickers or little toys. I always recommend quality time or activities with parents and family as a reward over material objects. Um, Family time is something that can be very reinforcing and rewarding for children, and is a great thing to kind of earn is fun time together as a family. Um, Once you create your list of reward options, you want to assign a value to them. So how many stickers or points or chips or however you set up your system equals a reward. We want the chart to be prominently displayed at the child's eye level, something that they can see multiple times a day, to constantly be in their awareness that this is what I'm working on, this is the potential reward I can earn, in order to help the child to remember and to increase motivation. We want to praise and motivate our children, and similar to what I was saying earlier, we want to reward them as close to the behavior as possible. So if you're working on sharing, every time your child shares, they get a sticker. Um, this many stickers leads to a special outing with mom or dad. Um, when we set up our reward system, we want to make sure that we explain it to our children and that they understand. We want them to really understand that this is a positive strategy. This is not a punishment or a consequence. This is something to reward you and to acknowledge good behavior and hard work at changing difficult behaviors. I recommend reviewing your list of rewards every so often, every month or so, just to, again, to increase motivation and keep things like new and fresh and fun. You want to be sure that you never give your child the reward until the behavior is performed. So we never want to provide a sticker when the child is in the middle of the behavior. The child could just stop and not complete the behavior because they had already gotten the reward, or we don't want to give the reward in advance. Um, it behavior should always be rewarded after it is performed, and the reward should be as close as possible to the occurrence of the behavior. It is most helpful when all caregivers are on board with the reward chart, that all caregivers are aware of the behaviors that we're working on and the system that we've set up to reinforce appropriate behaviors, and that everyone is in agreement and is aware of the plan. As I've talked about several times throughout this presentation, caregivers are models for children. So it's very important that caregivers have their support too. It's very important that caregivers are engaging in self-care behaviors, that they are taking care of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, across the board in order to be the best caregiver for children. Very important that caregivers communicate both difficulties as well as things that are going well. Using things like I messages. When X happens, I feel Y. Um, Acknowledging feelings amongst caregivers, really taking the time to listen to each other. Just as it's important for children to develop routines, it's just as important for adults to develop routines. Again, humans thrive off of consistency and predictability. Routines are a great way to establish those things. Simplify your life as much as possible to reduce stressors, manage money. Money is something that is the highest reported stressor amongst adults. So money management strategies can be really helpful in reducing stress. It can be great when parents are open and accepting of feedback, and willing to listen and consider what other people have to say or any advice that they may give. Being open to advice and understanding that, giving the person the benefit of the doubt, ideally, and not taking it as a criticism or blaming your parenting skills or abilities. Asking for help when needed. Parenting is extremely challenging. It's not uncommon for parents to feel overwhelmed and alone. And asking for help doesn't mean you're a bad parent. I really respect and admire the people that do ask for help when they need it. Again, with modeling, it's a great thing to model for your children that it's good to ask for help from when you need it. Taking breaks from your children is really important. This doesn't mean that you don't care or love your children, but when parents take a break from their children, they have more energy and motivation to deal with some of these difficult behaviors, to manage family situations. And when parents take breaks from their children, they're more likely to enjoy being with their child. And it's important that parents spend time doing things that they enjoy with their children. Um, Considering therapy is another thing that is important. So, if you're implementing different strategies, you're taking care of yourself, and you're still having some difficulty, if your functioning is impaired, um, therapy is a great thing to consider. When children engage in problematic behaviors and are difficult in school or in the community, this can result in a lot of stress for caregivers. So, therapy is a great option for learning how to cope and deal with these stressors. Some resources that go into everything that we discussed today, as well as additional information. Understood.com is an excellent resource. Lots of great information on there, as well as on childmind.org. Dr. Mack's behavior management site is another great place to find information and resources for challenging and difficult behaviors. The American Academy of Pediatrics is another great site, particularly for younger children. This can be really good in looking up developmental milestone charts. They have great recommendations on there. They also talk about a lot of the things that we discussed in this presentation today. And then Dr. Russell Barkley's website is another great place to find resources and information. There are different applications that can be helpful for behaviors. The Stop Go app is just a really simple traffic light app. You can set a timer, and the different lights show you how much time is left. So green light means you have time. When it's yellow, it means you have a minute left. Red, time is up. Class Dojo is another great app. I know a lot of teachers are using this, and I've heard that the home component of the app is really great for carrying over the strategies that the teacher is using at home. It's a great way to communicate with teachers and again, translate kind of the reward system the teacher is using into the home setting. Parents can reward points for positive behaviors, and they can also subtract points within the app. iReward Chart is another great app that parents can use to give positive reinforcement for good behavior. Parents can give stars to children when they engage in appropriate behaviors. And parents can create different categories and have different tasks and chores that they can assign on there. And their children can earn rewards for completing tasks. Calm Counter is a visual and audio tool to help people calm down when they are feeling anxious or angry. This app was developed for individuals on the autism spectrum, but really anyone can benefit from this app. There is a lot of good information on there about anxiety disorders, tools for relaxation, mental relaxation techniques. There are great social stories on there about anger and lots of tools for calming down. Breathe, Think, and Do Sesame Street app is a great app to help teach children different skills like problem solving and self control, planning, persisting on difficult tasks. In this app, the child helps a Sesame Street character calm down and solve their everyday problems. And what I really like about this app is it comes in Spanish as well. And just overall is really great for problem solving. And then ChoiceWorks is the last app. This is a great app for developing routines. So this app shows the child their routine, helps them complete different tasks, and kind of has it all in one space that they can refer back to.